Welcome to Best of the Best, a show about having meaningful conversations with business-driven industry thought leaders to find out just what exactly makes them the best of the best. Fred Parrish is your host and most recently co-author, along with Michael E. Gerber of the brand new book, The E-Myth, Chief Financial Officer. Fred draws on his vast experience as an author, speaker, and financial expert to sit down with a variety of well-known guests each week and get to the bottom of what exactly makes them and their business successful. Welcome to the Best of the Best. And now, here's your host, Fred Parrish.
Hi, everyone. This is Fred Parrish, and I am the guest of the Best of the Best. And we've got a great show today. We're going to talk about the sales champion mindset. And we're going to be talking with Eric Lofholm. And let me tell you a little bit about Eric. Eric is a master sales trainer and a best-selling author who has taught his proven systems to thousands of professionals around the world. He is president and CEO of Eric Lofholm International, Inc., an organization founded to professionally train people in the art and science of selling. From working with Tony Robbins to sharing the stage with a who's who of speakers at the Get Motivated seminars and trained by best-selling sales expert Dr. Donald Moyne, Eric is also an instructor for CEO Space and Networking University. He has used his own successful sales background to develop programs to help anyone dramatically improve in all areas that contribute to increasing their income and happiness. And who wouldn't want that? So, Eric, thank you for being on with us today. This is going to be a great conversation. I think everyone is really going to enjoy it.
Fred, I'm excited to be here.
Well, great. Well, I tell you what, let's start by just giving you an opportunity to tell us a little bit behind your background, behind what you do, kind of frame the conversation a bit.
Yeah, I've been professionally training people all over the world for the last 20 years, people that are interested in increasing revenue, making more sales, generating more leads, setting more appointments. And I have a very methodical step-by-step process that can be followed by anybody in virtually any industry, whether you're selling over the internet, selling over the phone, face-to-face. And I just love helping people increase revenue for their business.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and as a reformed accountant, I can use all this help I can get. So you mentioned that you started your career as a sales failure. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I ended up going to a real estate investment seminar in my early 20s, and it really got me excited and motivated, as seminars like that often do. And I ended up going to work for one of the speakers. And when I got to his company, I was willing to do whatever he wanted me to do. I was just interested in associating with him. And he offered me a sales job. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. And I was terrible at it. At the end of my first year, I was the bottom producer on a team of about 15 people. And I was told if I didn't hit my quota in the next 30 days, I'd be let go. And so my back was against the wall. I had to hit my quota if I wanted to keep my job. And I didn't know how to sell. And so it was at that point that I was introduced to my sales mentor, Dr. Donald Moyne. And I received professional training for the first time in my career. I ended up hitting the quota by one sale that next month. And the following month, I became the top producer in that company. So I went from worst to first in 60 days. And I learned firsthand the value of professional sales training.
Wow, that's great. That's amazing. Bottom to the top in 60 days. Excellent. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about some of those key attributes that we really need to have in order to be a sales champion?
Well, it starts with mindset. And let's face it, there's a stigma to sales in our culture. I've asked audiences all over the world, probably several 100,000 people this question: what do you think of when you think of a salesperson? And the most common answers are arm twisting, high pressure, manipulation, used car sales. And so people have resistance to sales. And so if you say, well, Eric, how do I increase my sales if I have resistance? And the answer is the obvious one: let go of your resistance to sales. So it starts with mindset. And what I teach is selling equals service. Sell from honesty, integrity, and compassion. Selling is about leading. Selling is about moving people to action. And so we begin by changing our view on sales. And once we begin to embrace selling, we can start looking at predictable ways that we can increase our results. I wrote a book called The System, and it's really based on how Michael Gerber influenced my life with his systematic approach to growing small businesses. And I look at sales through the lens of how do you systematically generate more leads, set more appointments, and close more sales. And that all can be broken down into how-to techniques, and we can get into as much of that as we have time for today, if you'd like. And it's really about looking at sales as, here's this challenge. We want to increase our results, and how do we predictably do that? How do we bring the leads in to then book appointments and then convert them into sales?
So do you have an example that you can give us that might help some people understand that a little bit more clearly?
Sure. Let's say a chiropractor. Chiropractor goes to school and they become a chiropractor, and they've never been trained in sales before, and now they need patients. And so if I was advising a chiropractor, I would say, let's begin by letting go of resistance to sales, if you have any, and embracing sales and understanding that it's just a hat that you wear in your business, like the financial hat or the hat that you wear and actually delivering the chiropractic services to people. So I'd get them to embrace sales. And then how are we going to generate leads? Maybe it's a coupon. Maybe it's a referral. Maybe it's going out and doing public speaking. Maybe they're going to go out and be a content creator to get more patients coming in the first place, which would be an appointment. And then what is the structure of that appointment? What is the sequence of that conversation? What is the scripting, the actual words that we would use to lead and guide that patient to continue to come back and use our services again and again and again? And it doesn't matter if you're a chiropractor, if you're a real estate agent, if you sell cars, if you're in financial services, if you're in network marketing. The principles that I teach are applicable to all of those different industries.
Very interesting. So you mentioned some things about artistic and scientific sides of selling. So how do those play into what you've just described?
Well, the art of it, it's like our intuition. You know, you're meeting with somebody and they say to you, I don't have the money. They give you that as an objection, a reason for not purchasing.
Right, all the time.
And you're sensing that's not really the issue. I know this person has the money. And so that's kind of the art of it. It's our intuition that leads and guides us into the conversation. The science of it is the how-tos. And I'm very methodical in my approach. I believe in preparing your presentation in advance, going in with a structured outline, and in many cases, determining the actual language patterns that you're going to use before you deliver the presentation, kind of like a musical group. Billy Joel's one of my favorite artists, and if he was to go on tour, he would identify what songs is he going to play in what order, and then the band would all get on the same page, and they would prepare, here's how we're going to do the concert. Well, a sales presentation mirrors a set of songs in sequence. And so it's a way of thinking about the presentation that most people, they've never been trained in this way of thinking. So they just kind of go in and they wing it. And
right.
When you wing it, you get wing it results.
Yeah, exactly. And again, being a recovering accountant, I've done that a lot myself. It doesn't work very well. So how can you get someone like myself, who is not a salesperson, who is more that technician, that accountant, to understand how to structure that presentation? Because there's a lot to that. And is there a certain structure that you use for that? Or is there, you do this kind of thing first and these things next, and then you have a close of some kind? Is that the way you go about it?
Exactly, yeah. And I teach everybody the same methodology, and we can dive into that here a little bit. But my first coaching would be around identity. because the way that you just described it is, I'm not a salesperson, but the reality is that's a hat that we wear in business. Right. And so it would start with embracing sales, and then the structure, I call it Sales Mountain. And Sales Mountain is simply the outline of an effective sales presentation. And so it starts with generating a lead and then booking an appointment. And then now we're in the live presentation. And the very first thing that you would do is build trust and rapport. And if you're selling one-on-one, then you'd identify customer needs by asking probing questions. And then you bring the benefits to life. And then at that point, now you're ready to close. And you'd walk them through the price and what's included, how it works, and payment options. And then you'd ask for the business. And then you might get an objection. And then we're going to handle objections in a systematic way. And if they don't purchase, then we're going to follow up in a systematic way. And that's the basic structure that I teach. And I break down sales we dissect it down into smaller steps. So as I was training you, we would take probing questions, identifying customer needs. And I just train you on that. And then I go, okay, you got that? You go, okay, I got it. All right, now we can go to the next part, bringing the benefits to life. And so you'd learn it step by step, and then it all fits together into this like completed puzzle. And it's very step by step, and it's very easy to learn in the way that I teach it.
And so then that can become the training platform, I guess, for any other salespeople that you might hire in your company.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just say you happen to have a sales team. You open up a solar shop and you're selling solar and you get really good at it. You're like, okay, I'm going to add a salesperson. Well, the way that I teach it, it's a very step-by-step process that then you can then teach to the salesperson that you hire, and potentially you can have 5 people, 10 people. You can grow it even more. And it's very Michael Gerber-like. I've been greatly influenced by his work. Love his approach to business, and I think it's absolutely applicable, his ideas to sales as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Michael was just here last week, in fact, so we have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Michael, and that is the number one thing that he impresses on people constantly. And it's that.
If you look at his book, E-Myth, one of the things he talks about in terms of the sales process, it's a fully orchestrated interaction between you and the prospect. And so he and I are saying the exact same thing. Prepare in advance what it is that you're going to say, so you know what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, how you're going to say it, why you're going to say it. And the challenge is the chiropractor that resists sales, they don't structure it because they don't want to be quote unquote salesy, and they don't realize that this is a necessary part of their practice. And it's actually not hard at all when you have somebody like myself to teach it to you. And so it's something that I really enjoy turning the light bulb on in people's minds where they go, okay, I can do this now. You're explaining it in a way where I understand it.
Right. And I think that's important with really any technical aspect of whatever it is you're trying to teach. If you're trying to teach someone, that means they don't already know it. And so we have to deliver that in a way that is as non-technical as possible, but cover and enable the implementation of those technical aspects. We do a lot of that with our financial management approach as well. So what are some of those aspects of influence that are so vital in that process? I mean, you've got to try and influence the way that prospect is going to respond.
Yeah, well, one of the keys is at the end of the day, people buy benefits. And so we want to bring the benefits to life in the presentation. And one of the best ways to do that is with storytelling. And so what I would advise the chiropractor or anybody for that matter to do, identify 7 stories that you can tell. And you would tell these same 7 stories over and over and over and over again to convey the benefits, to bring those benefits to life, to overcome any concerns that the prospect may have, like price. That's a very common concern that somebody has. And so you would explain to the prospect a story about somebody that you worked with, and they had a concern about price, if that was true if that was a true concern. And here's how it was in their best interest to take action and do what it is that you were recommending. And once you take the time to prepare these stories in advance, it just becomes very simple. You're telling that same story, just like the musician singing the same song over and over again. You're telling the same story over and over again. And that's what I'm just sharing with you here is not intuitive. Most people don't know that, but it's easy. It's like a bike lock. If I give you a bike lock and I say, open it up, you wouldn't be able to do it because it's a lock. But if I gave you the combination, you can open it every single time. And the techniques in a sales presentation mirror that of a bike lock, that once you understand the combination, you go, oh my gosh, this is actually really simple.
Oh, that's excellent. So is there a set of imperative fundamentals that we need to address in any kind of approach to that process, that sales process?
Yeah, that's where the sales mountain that we talked about a little bit ago comes into play. The first thing that we're going to do when we're live with the prospect is build trust and rapport. And that's universal. And the reason why we're going to lead with trust and rapport is because the prospect, oftentimes when the presentation starts, they're like this because they know that you're there to try to sell them something. Think
Right.
about a timeshare presentation. I walk in there with my wife. Before we walk into the presentation, we shake hands and we say, honey, under no circumstances are we going to buy anything, right? So we walk in like this, and yet in the timeshare industry, they sell every single day. How can you sell when the husband and wife shake hands and agree under no circumstances are going to buy? Well, they follow these principles. And it starts with trust and rapport. So you want to go into the strategy of how you're going to build trust and rapport. And then the next one is to identify customer needs by asking questions. And the challenge is our favorite subject to talk about is ourselves.
Right.
So if I want to talk about me, but see, influence isn't about me, it's all about them. And I want to enter their world and view their experience from their perspective. So it's counterintuitive to what I want to talk about. I want to strategically take the time to listen and identify what their needs are. And when you identify the true needs of your prospect, your presentation becomes practically irresistible. Then we bring the benefits to life. And part of that is the storytelling. And when you follow this sequence, it predictably increases your close ratio. I mean, it's not even a question of whether or not it will. It absolutely will. It's just most people that have never been trained, they don't know this. And this is how I went from a bottom producer to a top producer in 60 days, because I was literally trained by the Obi-Wan Kenobi of sales training. So Dr. Moyne's like a Michael Gerber. Michael was small business, Dr. Moyne was sales. And so he looked at selling from a scientific standpoint and could take somebody like me who had never been trained and give me the best of the best. So I could immediately, my skill level went from here to here, like boom, instantly. And it was a skill set transfer. It wasn't motivation. It was a skill transfer. And so that's what I've dedicated my career to, is transferring over these skills to anybody that would like to learn them.
So how long did you work with Dr. Moyne? It sounds like it was a very short period of time.
I've actually been working with him for the last 20 years. And so we first started off and I had an immediate breakthrough, but I understood that he is the living master of sales. That's who Dr. Moyne is. And I got that immediately. And so my mindset was, I'm going to run with him as long as he'll allow me to hang out with him and spend time and learn from him. And so we still coach typically once a month. We'll spend an hour together and he'll work with me on my business and what's going on. He's given me his permission to take his content, go out and teach it to others. And so the core of what I teach is his work.
Oh, excellent. So back when you were in last and you went from last to first, how long did you have? 1 session, 5 sessions? How many times and how much time in general did you spend with him? Because it sounds like it is readily transferable here.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 5 sessions. It was a very short amount of time. And it was the thought of structuring the presentation in advance. I had just been winging it. And that's what so many people do, because they resist sales. And so if you resist sales, you're likely not going to go in with a well-prepared presentation, because you're like the opposite of sales. I don't want to come across quote unquote salesy.
Right.
So the distinction of going in with a well-prepared presentation and then knowing how to structure it and then applying in these best practices, it was not hard to learn. And I still use the same methodology to this day.
Yeah, and that really was the point I wanted to make sure the audience got, was that it was a fairly short time for you to learn the things you had to learn. This is not something that takes decades to understand.
No.
It may take longer to refine and to further develop, but to get the basic concepts and to really develop those basic abilities can be done relatively quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 30 days or less, if you really put the work in, you had the right training. And then on a refining standpoint, 12 months would transform you. I mean, if you really applied yourself, and one of the things that I've done is I've documented the entire process. And so we have it in all different types of formats, whether it's in books or audios or modules and so forth. And it's that same core teaching that Dr. Moyne gave me years ago. That's the focus of my training.
Well, and I think that's really important for people like me, again, reformed accountant, to know that we actually can learn how to do these things and be very effective at it. So that I think is just really, really important information. So you mentioned earlier that selling equals service. So can you expand on that a little bit and kind of, I think to me that is fairly self-explanatory, but I'm sure you can add some color to that.
Well, I think it comes down to the mindset that if I'm in the sales presentation, it's not about me, it's all about the prospect. So if I'm selling sales training to somebody else, I'm there in a service role that, hey, I have this great information you're going to get a far better deal out of this than I am. I'm going to receive the compensation that I'm going to receive. You're going to receive a skill set for life. If you're selling accounting services to somebody, I'm going to receive the financial compensation you're going to receive a professional accountant to make sure that your books are being handled in the proper manner, whatever the accounting services are. It's just really understanding you've got your service hat. It's not, selling isn't something you're doing to somebody else. You're there like a doctor. If I'm not feeling well and I go in to see the doctor, they're going to, diagnose what's going on and give me a recommendation that's going to help me feel better. And in selling, it's a very similar thing that we can go in and we can be there of service. We're not trying to talk somebody into something you don't need. We're not trying to manipulate somebody. We're trying to really connect with them and find out what is their need and how can my product or service help them, and then communicate that in the best way that we know how. And then if we can truly help them, hopefully they end up purchasing from us.
Yeah, and our approach really is a lot that way, because we are there to help people understand things that today they don't have the ability to understand. So at least I feel like we're on the right track anyway. So Eric, you are widely recognized as an expert in scripting. So can you give us some tips there and help some people understand how to go about that and kind of that process that you have developed?
Yeah, so it's really it's 3 steps that we're talking about here. And it starts, number 1, with the mindset of embracing sales. And then from there, it's the outline, which is the sales mountain. So the trust and rapport, the probing questions, the stories, bringing benefits to life, the close. The next level is the scripting. So what do you actually say to build trust and rapport? What do you actually say to identify customer needs? What do you actually say, the scripting of the story? What do you actually say, the scripting of the close? And so this is what Dr. Moyne taught me. This is kind of the foundation of his methodology. And so if I was coaching somebody like the chiropractor, I would actually lay out the talk tracks of what the chiropractor should say in the presentation. And it doesn't mean he or she needs to be robotic. It doesn't mean that it needs to be memorized. It's just You want to prepare in advance the most powerful track talks that you can, and then go in and deliver them in the presentation. So it might look something like this. For me to best help you, I need to ask you a few questions about your situation. Would that be okay? And then they're going to say yes. And if I was coaching you, I would give you that exact phrase. So you would say to your prospect, for me to best help you, I need to ask you a few questions about your situation. Would that be okay? They're going to say yes for you, just like they say yes for me, because human beings respond in predictable ways. So when you get the best words created, it can produce a predictable result. Like in the Billy Joel concert, he doesn't play Piano Man the entire concert. It's the most popular song. He and the band walk off the stage, and predictably everyone yells, "Encore! Encore!"
Right.
And then Billy and the band come back, and then they play Piano Man, and the standing ovation, and everybody goes home happy. And just like that's totally predictable. If you went to the next Billy Joel concert, a sales presentation is predictable like that. And when you have it organized and orchestrated, and you have the right phrases down, it's like you're Superman. You're bulletproof. You're 10 feet tall. Your confidence soars, and that's what scripting's about.
So you had mentioned earlier, you don't want people to be robotic, so you don't write out every word. You really put together an outline and make sure that you touch on very specific points and use very particular words to convey the message that you're trying to get across. Is that a fair way of
Sometimes
saying
it
that?
is word for word. So
Okay.
in a moment, you'll say or think the word millionaire. All of you watching this, you'll say or think the word millionaire. If you do what a millionaire does, you'll get what a millionaire has. If you invest your money where millionaires currently have their money invested, what will you become? A millionaire. That's called leading language. That's where if I leave out a punchline, if you will, if I leave out the phrase, the other person says it. It's a different level of influence if you say it versus if I tell you. It's a different level of influence if you say it versus if I tell you. So that specific phrase could be word for word, because if you say, if you do what a millionaire does, you'll get what a millionaire has. If you invest your money where millionaires currently have their money invested, what will you become? They'll say a millionaire for you just like they say it for me, as long as you say it in that precise language pattern. So sometimes it's word for word. It doesn't have to be. The key is preparation. That's really my main point to drive home.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Gerber actually says in E-Myth, he talks about scripting it out word for word. And I'm not disagreeing with his level of precision. Sometimes it's more of a conversation, and sometimes it is scripted word for word, like a front of the room speech where you're not interacting with the audience. Oftentimes that's going to be more word for word. The main point, though, is the preparation. And there's certain ways of communicating that make it more influential, make it more persuasive. There's a whole science. This is what Dr. Moyne and I teach, and there's others that teach it as well. Anybody can learn it, and I think that's a big point of this conversation we're having.
Yeah, and I think that there are some people who can look at a script that is very detailed in the way it's been written and deliver that in a way that doesn't sound robotic. There are some people who just can't do that. And so, as you say, they have to prepare probably more to get beyond that robotic sound. Because to me, and please tell me if I'm on the right track here, but it sounds like to me, or seems to me, that if someone delivers this presentation in a very robotic and very broken way, it's not going to have the results that you want them to have.
Yeah, it's all about connection. I remember when I got LASIK eye surgery, and I was meeting with the doctor, and he was going through the presentation, the sales conversation, and he said, I'm not the cheapest in town, but if there's one area where you don't want to cut corners, it's on your eyes.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to one of those chop shops.
Yeah, I know of some of those kinds of outcomes.
He probably says that every single time. If there's one place you don't want to cut corners, it's on your eyes. you definitely don't want to go to one of those chop shops.
Yeah, that's great.
And, I remember the day I was getting the surgery done, and I'm underneath the thing that's going to do the laser thing. And I was like, I'm so glad I'm going with this gentleman. And I remembered that script that he had said. And you wouldn't think of a LASIK eye surgeon as a sales professional, but he had a very, very well organized presentation. And he likely had studied this type of work that we're talking about here.
Right. No, great example. Okay, so are there some things that we have not talked about that you want to leave the audience with, just to fill out the conversation?
Well, one thing, it's in the sales conversation. It's a little different than what we've been discussing, and it has to do with lead generation. And my favorite lead generation idea is to sell by leveraging networks. And so in traditional sales, we're taught, give me a lead, and then I'll go sell to that lead, like the chiropractor sitting down with the patient, or the LASIK eye surgeon sitting down with the person like myself. And that's great. But then we can also sell by leveraging networks. And so years ago, when I was a speaker at CEO Space, and we were talking at the beginning, before we came on air, about our connection at Bernie Dorman. And when I spoke at CEO Space has thousands of people that are prospects for me. So I wasn't selling to Bernie, who runs CEO Space, to buy from me. I was influencing Bernie to get access to his network.
Right.
And I was able to get access to hundreds of people in his network, and did probably $250,000 in business by leveraging that network. So if you think of Starbucks and Barnes & Noble, Starbucks wanted to put a Starbucks inside of Barnes & Noble to leverage all the traffic in their store.
Right.
So if you're wanting more customers, think about who already has your customer, and then build a relationship with that person, and you can potentially get hundreds, maybe even thousands of new customers or clients. And it's a pivot in your thinking.
Yeah, and if you can find a way for that referral source to benefit from that relationship at the same time, that's an absolute home run.
Yeah, that's really the key. How do you influence, like in Starbucks case? Starbucks knows the value of having a Starbucks inside of a Barnes & Noble. But the question is, how do you get Barnes & Noble to say yes?
Right.
And so they had to have a whole presentation about likely the financial benefit. I don't know what their agreement was, but I would imagine every cup of coffee, Barnes & Noble's getting a piece of the action. And so it's thinking like this other person, and how are they going to value? And sometimes it's a reciprocal referral relationship, meaning you refer them and they refer you, like a real estate agent and an insurance person. They can cross-refer each other. Sometimes it's a financial agreement where there's like an affiliate commission or some type of profit share on the revenue that comes in. But that's a strategy that's really served me well in my business.
Yeah, that's great information. So how can our listeners learn more about Eric Lofholm International?
My main website is saleschampion.com, and I'm very active on social media. I'm the only Lofholm in the sales training space. So if you type in Eric Lofholm on Google, all the social medias will pop up. If you're a YouTube person, there's videos. If you're a podcaster, we have a podcast. If you're on Instagram, if you like Facebook. So whatever social media platform you're into, we're likely there. And so just go Google me or go to my main website, saleschampion.com.
That's great, Eric. Thank you. Any books that you recommend for people to read so they can jumpstart their sales activity?
Well, I've written two 200-plus page books on the topics that we're talking about today, the sales mountain and sales scripting. I actually give away the PDFs of those books for free on my website. If you want a free electronic version, you can go to saleschampion.com, hit the free button. Those are also available on Amazon if you want a paperback version. It's called The System and Sales Scripting Mastery. The System and Sales Scripting Mastery. And then my mentor, Donald Moyne, has Unlimited Selling Power. That's one of the all-time great books ever written on sales, Unlimited Selling Power.
Great. That's great information. I'm going to go on and get my copy, so I suggest everyone else does as well. And I was told that you aspire to be the next Zig Ziglar, and so I have a Zig Ziglar quote here. Every sale has 5 obstacles: no need, no money, no hurry, no desire, no trust. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, Zig's was, he's no longer alive, but when he was alive, he was the all-time great sales trainer in the history of the world. And he's inspired so many people. And I loved Zig's message. And that's a great quote. I hadn't heard that one. That's a great quote.
Yeah, and I had the privilege of seeing him a couple of times. Just an amazingly charismatic guy. Just fantastic. Well, Eric, I'd like to thank you. This has been just tremendous information. I'm going to go back and listen to it several times myself. I'm going to your website, get your books. This is something that every company needs, whether that business owner is that salesperson or whether they have a staff of people. They need to know how to go about doing that. I really appreciate you being on with us today.
I had a great time, and I hope for everybody watching, you got at least one great idea, and perhaps it shifted your mindset a little bit. These ideas have generated millions of dollars in revenue for me, hundreds of millions of dollars for my clients. So take the best of the ideas and go and apply them and increase your revenue.
Yeah. Again, thanks, Eric. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for watching. And also special thanks to our executive producer, Robert Browning with the Profit Experts, and Zach Lewis, the digital broadcast producer with Real News PR. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Best of the Best. To find out more about Fred, his latest book, or his acclaimed automated CFO software, The Profit Beacon, follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/theprofitbeacon, or visit his website at www.theprofitbeacon.com for exciting offers.